Welcome to this tutorial for the ATR-72 for MSFS. This tutorial is from a runway start with engines on. We're going to do a full flight and we're going to fly the aircraft in the simplest way possible, so if you're new this should be a great introduction. So let's fly. Jumping inside the flight deck, as usual we'll head straight down to the FMC and start setting up our flight. So we'll head over to the main FMS and hit initialize. We'll now hit flight plan initialize to start setting up our plan, and hit route. So today we're going from Stansted Airport to Glasgow in Scotland, and you program this very similarly to an Airbus. Once you click from to, your departure and destination airport appear. On the flight plan page, select your departure airport and select a runway and a SID if you wish. Once you've done that, hit the execute key. You can now scroll through the plan to your arrival airport. Click your arrival airport, select the approach, so we're taking the ILS for runway 5, and hit execute. Discontinuities are cleared just by clicking the clear key and the discontinuity itself, and we now have a flight plan end to end from Stansted to Glasgow. Now on the performance page you can see our V-speeds are already set, and we're also going to enter our cruising altitude on the next page. So that's pretty much everything done. We'll bring that flight plan back up just so it's in front of us. We can now head up to the autopilot control panel and dial in our cruising altitude. So we'll go for 26,000 feet here. And your selected altitude is displayed on the PFD just above the altitude tape, so right here. That was a lot to take in, so be sure to rewatch sections as you need to and make notes. The next step is to put the airplane in nav mode and vertical speed mode. It does have advisory VNAV, but it's very dependent on plan. So for simplicity, we're going to use vertical speed mode, and we use the pitch wheel to dial in our desired vertical speed. Initially 2,000 feet per minute, decreasing to 1,500 above 10,000, and then 1,000 feet per minute above 20,000. And that's all you need to do. The next step is parking brake off and full throttle. Rotate at the rotate speed that was in our performance page. The conditions are terrible today, but as soon as you have positive rate you can bring the landing gear up, retract the flaps, and also activate the autopilot. The airplane will now turn to follow your flight plan and start climbing towards your desired cruise altitude. You can dial in the ILS frequency for your destination in a few ways. We're going to use the keypad here. So click nav until on the touchscreen in the top right corner here, ILS is selected. Now dial in the ILS frequency of your destination. Dial in all the numbers in the frequency without a decimal point. Hit enter, then on the touchscreen click the arrows and it will switch that to be your primary frequency. If you encounter icing during your climb, the de-ice is found on the overhead panel right here. Just activate propeller, engine and airframe as required. At cruising altitude, the airplane will start to level off and the altitude annunciator will be displayed on the PFD. You'll also see the airspeed start to increase slightly. On the FMC, we'll find out what our bottom of descent altitude is going to be. So at our final waypoint, it's 2,400 on this plan. So we'll dial in 2,400 to the altitude selector. The airplane will stay level until we specifically activate descent. Now once you've dialed that in, just like the cruising altitude, you will see it displayed above the altitude tape on the PFD. While you're at cruise, you should be able to keep the throttles fully forward without the plane going over speed. But if it does start to creep a little bit close to that red tape, just decrease the throttle accordingly. Returning to the FMC for a second and hitting the performance button, we can see that we've been given our approach speeds, so we'll remember this, it's 112 knots at full flaps, just for later on in this flight. And once again, we'll return to the flight plan page. What you will notice at the bottom of the flight plan page, if you hit the progress key, you'll get a timer to top of descent, but it's not always accurate. Again, it's very dependent on plan, so we'll follow the simulator's ATC for our descent call. When we receive the call to descend, we'll hit vertical speed, We'll use the pitch wheel to dial in a vertical speed of -2000. You can see the blue indicator moving on the right of the PFD. We'll now idle the throttle while we descend, and the airplane should descend in stable flight to your bottom of descent altitude. When you reach that altitude, again you'll see the altitude annunciator appear, and the airplane will start to slow down naturally. Once you reach your approach speed, drop the gear, the flaps, and balance the throttle to maintain that approach speed. As the airplane turns on to final, set the nav source to ILS and hit the approach key. The airplane should now start to follow the localizer and the glide slope. As you descend on the glide slope, make sure to manage that throttle to keep your airspeed where it should be, so that's at the desired approach speed, which was 112 knots. Just for reference here, it will vary for your flight, but my throttle position was here for that phase of flight. Landing the ATR is like landing any other plane. As you reach minimums, disengage the autopilot, set the throttles to idle, start to flare the airplane, and then as soon as you touch down, hit the reversers and the brakes, and the airplane will start to slow. You can return the throttles to idle below 80 knots or so. And that concludes our flight in the ATR. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this useful. If you did, please drop a like, feel free to subscribe, take care, and I'll see you next time.